I'm Nirupama Benis. I'm here to present some work that we're doing in European project EJP RD, enabling interoperability for rare disease research, specifically with OHDSI OMO. EJP RD is the European Joint Program for Rare Diseases. It is a relatively large European project that involves different stakeholders like research funders, of course researchers, but also hospitals and patient organizations that all work together to make sure that research results can be rapidly translated to benefits for the patients. Rare disease data is very scattered because there are only so many patients with this particular rare disease in a country. So on the European level, we're trying to make sure that the different data can be connected to each other. And of course, this really helps if the data becomes fair. So EJP RD has a huge emphasis on making data fair. The European Commission also has a big onus on rare disease research, and they've started up 24 European reference networks. So these are virtual networks of experts on rare diseases, and each ERN is focused on a different kind of rare disease. Like there is one ERN for vascular anomalies, there's one for rare disease associated with the eye and for lungs, and these experts will coordinate with the hospitals that are actually treating these patients. And the ERNs will set up patient registries that need to be shared responsibly, and the research has also to be done across the different ERNs. And the JRC from the European Commission, the Joint Research Center, has proposed 16 data elements, which are called common data elements for patient registries to collect. So all of these ERNs will collect these 16 data elements. So it was great for human interoperability because you know that if you query for these elements, you will find information in the other patient registries. But it's not so great for machine interoperability. So in the EJP RD, we built a semantic data model around this CDEs. The CDE model is consists of 12 modules. So there are RDF and checks representations of these models, and we use the semantic science integrated ontologies design patterns to build the models. So basically what we do is reuse a simple pattern that each entity has attribute and a role, and this role is determined by a process that happens. For example, a human is a patient if they has the role of a patient if they are, for example, hospitalized, and this human being will have attributes for them like personal information, date of birth, and also things like blood pressure. And this is an example of one of the models in the semantic data model. This is for personal information. This is a graphical representation of an RDF example data. This is a little bit complicated, but the important thing here is that each person has an ID and that has a value, and they also have sex and birth date values. But these values are associated with ontological concepts. So we've taken the identifier concept from SCIO and the birth date, female and sex concepts from NCIT. So with this semantic data model, we want to connect to the EJP RD's virtual platform, which is an idea to connect several rare disease resources together so that federated data analytics can be performed on all of these resources. So the ERN rare disease registries can connect to these virtual platform and share data with each other. But we also want to connect to a wider healthcare platform And that is, and one possibility is OHDSI OMOP. They have a common data model that they ask all different data sources to convert the data to this common data model, and then analysis can be performed on all of these data sources. This is growing in popularity right now because they have a lot of tools that make it very easy for conversion, and they have mostly observational data, but they also have EHR data, clinical data linked to it. And this is an overview of the OMOP common data model. It is basically a tabular data model. They use a lot of SQL-based databases, and they really advocate the use of standardized vocabularies. They have an interface called Athena, where you can browse through several vocabularies, over 150, SNOMED, LOINC, ICD-10 included. And we have, in the work that we've done, we want to link the rare disease registries that use the CD semantic model to the data that is shared on OMOP, which can be other registries or EHR records. And we want to be able to move between both the models with as little data loss as possible. And we will do this using mappings between terminologies and also the data transformation itself. We are not the first ones to use to do terminology mappings, of course. Several people have done it before, and they've found some common issues that come up. So first one, of course, is accuracy. You have to make sure that the two terms that you're mapping are actually should have that particular mapping relationship. And so that is not just based on the term itself, not just the lexical match, but also the semantics of the term and its place in the ontology tree. And the representation of this mapping has to be fair so that it can also be reusable by machines. And you have to make sure that changes in the underlying terminologies will not affect the mappings too much, or the mappings have to be updated. So the way that we did our mappings was a manual mapping. We had a small team that mapped between all the terms in the CDE semantic model to terms that could be used in the OMOP common data model. And for that, we used the Athena tool. And we represented these mappings were based on the recommendation of SSSOM. So there they recommend that you define relationship between terms using OWL or SCORS terms, and they have their own pattern, a table of mapping representations, but they can also convert that table to RDF using their tools. And this representation we also verified with semantic web specialists, data modelers, and domain experts in curation hackathons. And there also we used Athena. We also used the ontology lookup service and BioPortal to make sure that we got the semantics of all of the terms right. The CD semantic model has 48 terms need to be mapped, and we took them from 9 different ontologies. And the final mapping, we were able to map 38 terms to OMOP CDM. And of them, 29 terms were terminology mappings from 4 ontologies that can work with OMOP CDM. An example of that is the CDE semantic model. We used the NCIT term for female, and we determined there is a related match to the term female in Athena. Even though both the terms are basically the same, it is an exact lexical match, but the semantics behind these terms are slightly different, so we decided to use related match. And another example is the human phenotype ontology term, neonatal onset. which describes the onset of the disease symptoms. And we determined that it was a broad match to two terms, um, uh, neonatal and period of onset. And both of these terms are from SNOMED. But we didn't have to map all of these terms to other ontologies alone. We are also able to fit them into the OMOP table structure. So 9 terms we are able to just fit into OMOP. For example, in the CD semantic model, we have patient status, either dead or alive. And we took these terms from Bio-Ontology. But in OMOP, there is something called a death table. So if the patient ID is registered in this death table, it means they're dead. And if it is absent in the death table, it means they're alive. So we don't have to use any terminology mappings over there. And these mappings we converted to RDF, and we stored it along with the CDE data files. And using SPARQL, we can generate the OMOP table. So these are just snippets of the RDF files. This file is about personal information. There is identifier for the patient and their sex. And this is just an RDF of the examples of the mapping that I showed before. See here, female is a related match to Athena female. And with the SPARQL, we can generate a person table, which in OMOP, which has a person ID and a gender concept ID. So our solutions to the common issues of terminology mappings are, I mean, they're not complete, and they are sometimes very specific to our case, because for accuracy, we decided to tackle it by using manual mappings, but this cannot be used all the time because in our case, we only had about 50 terms to map, which is relatively small. So we're able to do it manually. But it is the best way to assure accuracy. And for representation, we try to use a widely used format so that we are more interoperable with the rest of the world. We use the SSSOM, and they have nice tooling and terminology surrounding this standard. And for reusability, we make sure that we use RDF so that it is machine actionable. And we have put this up on GitHub so that others can use this mapping if needed. And the trickiest part was updates to the mapping if the underlying terminologies have changed. We kind of use OMOP's solutions for this. So Athena has its own IDs for each of the concepts from the standardized terminologies. So for example, SNOMED has its own ID, but Athena has an ID for that SNOMED ID, so that if there are any changes in SNOMED, Athena can still capture that by using the same ID, and so our links don't have to break. So we were able to make the rare disease data interoperable with OHDSI by mapping between ontologies and also using semantic web technologies. Now what remains is to first evaluate our work with another project called OMOP to OBO. So there they're mapping a lot of OMOP terminologies to OBO ontologies. And this work is still going on. We are in touch with some of the members of this project, and we want to see how our work evaluates with theirs. And they have some Python tooling surrounding their work too. And we want to use this finalized method on a rare disease registry, because OHDSI, they give funding to data partners to convert their data models to the common data model. And a couple of rare disease registries have received that funding and are working on this conversion. So we hope to collaborate with them to finalize this data conversion. And I want to acknowledge everybody who helped us finish this work. Like I said, there is a group small team that maps from CDE to OMOP and the other way around. And we had help of the CDE modeling team within EJP RD. And thanks to them, this work was possible.